ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. Hearty welcome to Jnanarjane Empowering Excellence. Friends, today's Wednesday study circle, we have arranged a very interesting topic, building the data Skynet for audit and finance function. Very interesting one. So audit is technology-based audit is taking over our traditional audit line. To understand this, we have an eminent chartered accountant, CA Anand P Jangid. He's an expert, tech expert, chartered accountant, having vast experience in technology. He's going to impart his knowledge on this building the data Skynet for audit and finance function. On behalf of Bangalore branch and on behalf of all the participants here, hearty welcome to CA Anand. Hearty welcome, Anand.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Participants, you are the reason for this program. Week after week, every Wednesday, we conduct this study circle because of you. Your interest, your eagerness to learn about new things made us to organize this program. Today's session is definitely very interesting for all those who are in finance and audit area of practice or in the function in the industry. Definitely it will help. It will add value to your learning. So hearty welcome to each one of you. Hearty welcome to branch secretary Divya. Hearty welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Friends, please visit bangalore.ica.org for all our upcoming programs. There are many programs lined up in this month and upcoming month. Please visit bangalore.icai.org. That note, once again, hearty welcome to each one of you. Over to Divya.
Thank you so much, sir. Very warm welcome to all the participants of today's program and also speaker of today's program. We have with us Anand P Jangid, sir, to present on today's topic. To give a very brief introduction about him, he is a passionate evangelist for tech-based disruption in audit and finance domain. He is professionally a chartered accountant and certified information system auditor. He is managing partner at AJA, an organization with focus in areas of forensic audit, IS audit, fraud analytics, blockchain for internal audit function. He is also visiting faculty for IIM Bangalore, teaching IS audit and fraud analytics. He is also speaker at North America, CAX and Bureau, CAX of Osaka, visiting faculty of Osaka, ICA and Wellinger Institute of Management. For this very brief introduction, I wholeheartedly welcome you, sir, for today's program.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hearty welcome, please.
Thank you.
Over to you, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Divya, ma'am, and thank you, Biti Shetty, sir. It's a pleasure to be here today and share my thought with all my fellow professionals. And as I was told by Shetty, sir, I think all of you can see my screen. That's I'll just try to understand what would be something which will add value in terms of what's happening. I think it's a great thing today we are all sitting at home and having a discussion like that. And I was telling some of my friends, because maybe in 2014-15, 13-14, I was at Infosys, and that time we had a CP study circle out there in Infi. And we wanted to do a kind of a VC with Hyderabad and Bangalore VC to share knowledge. And that time it was something which was said, no, in CP circle you have to be physically present. But we have come a long way now from days, and we are having so many sessions and all things, and you can actually record it. And it's just amazing how knowledge sharing is going on. Now, my topic for today is something in line with that. There is a lot of things which is changing, and I kept the term Skynet because I'm a big fan of the Terminator series, and I think anyone who has watched the movie Terminator or any of the Terminator movies understand what we are talking about here. Okay, so the idea is that when we are talking about this process, building Skynet. What is a Skynet? If I have to actually start with this concept of Skynet, we call Skynet in something in the form of an automated system. Now, audit and finance has come a long way today. And in many of our discussion and deliberation, we always talk about that, yeah, this has changed, that has changed. This is now in a different manner and all that kind of thing. Now, we need to understand that there is a kind of a silent revolution which is already happening, whether we like it or not. And it is coming our way, friends. It's just a matter of time before you see the full impact of this, that, oh, suddenly it's actually something which has become main in the main era of working and all the things. So before I, deep dive into the thing, first topic is what is a Skynet? Some people may not know that this was a symbol of Skynet. If you have been seeing, in many of these movies of this, and the analogy goes something like that, that in future, what is going to happen is uh, we would be seeing a situation where machines will take over, and it's an artificial intelligence software which will command the whole defense of the system, and they will at one point of time say the human beings are the biggest problem for whole world, and they will try to eliminate humans who created the whole system. Now anyway, that is like all the movie thing, but if you have been following Mr. Elon Musk, or if you are following some of the big names which are there in this domain, you will see one very interesting trend which is happening, and the trend is like this. We are talking about artificial intelligence to a great extent take over a lot of tasks which were earlier the domain of humans. And this task, friends, is something which is actually going for a long, long way. They are actually trying to change in a way that we can see the impact of this in every phases of our life. Now, this is the concept of what we call as the Skynet. Okay. Uh, I don't say that in future we will be seeing something like this happening, but there is one very interesting, there is something called as a crowd sourcing of knowledge. When you're actually talking to multiple folks and you try to get their information, there is one very interesting, survey which was done by, it was a global CFO survey done by PwC. And they had a big report on that. I just took out one of the very interesting question which was asked there. And the question was, friends, that which technologies are going to have a big impact or a large impact in terms of what we call it as uh, finance and audit function. Now, they said in the near future, this was actually done something around 2019-20, a little old. They said RPA, or robotic process automation. We all have heard about this concept. And robotic process automation is the in thing, and this is the kind of thing which is going to have a big impact. And near term, it was like the idea is that this is something which is going to change how we see automation happening. If I have to use the word RPA, it is nothing but in a very, very simple way, Excel macros. We have seen a lot of Excel macros. We have seen how they work. But these are the macros which are working at, the system level or at the enterprise level and can do much more than what we can actually think of. Now, from that perspective, we have, what we call it as the whole idea that information systems are going to impact and this technology is going to change a lot. Second thing, which is very interesting, is the basic AI. You can see, 2019-20, they said the basic AI, very, very fundamental thing is going to be there. And the third point was blockchain. And the prediction was that in next 2 to 3 years, which is around, up to 2022-23, you will see that RPA has shrunk down because automation, whatever we can think of, that would have happened. And more people will move to basic and intermediate AI. And when I say basic and intermediate AI, friends, we need to understand that we have a lot of finance functions, from even classifying the GL accounts to other things, which are nowadays being done by artificial intelligence. And I'll actually give you the example. I'll discuss you some of the case studies also. So that is something which is changing. And yeah, blockchain is also one of the area which is going to impact. Now, longer term, this is 2000 till up to 27, 28, we see a very interesting, thing. I hope you can see that, 75% of the whole thing is moving into basic, intermediate, and what we call as advanced AI. Now, what does this whole thing mean? That is something which is very important for us to understand. What it is trying to say is you are going to see a lot of changes in terms of what we call it as our approach towards looking at different business functions and how we are trying to deal with that. Now, this is one of the very interesting, I would say, survey, which actually brings out a crowdsourced knowledge in terms of what is happening. Now, when we say, this term AI, this is something which is very interesting. I don't want to go deep dive into the term AI. I will be focusing more on a subset of AI, which is called machine learning. But I hope you know that in audit and finance functions, we are seeing a lot of impact of using artificial intelligence, which is more of a Skynet, which can be on predictive value. Let me give you an example, which is very interesting. Nowadays, we have seen some organizations, especially large conglomerate, who are actually using one of the very interesting concept, which we have all learned, but we have never applied it in a real life situation. The concept is of time series. I'll just give you an example here. Now, we all know what is time series used for. It is more of a what we call it as, it is more of a perspective of what we call it as a kind of predicting that, okay, last 2 years, if this data looks like this year, how the data will look like. Okay. Now, this is always a kind of thing which a lot of organization people are looking at, that, okay, this is something which we need to look into. This is something which we have to understand. But there are organizations which are using it in a different manner altogether. What are they using it from? They are using it to say that, okay, let's say, for example, based on the last 3 years data, the time series is saying that the financial statement of my subsidiary should look like this. But if there is a huge deviation, then those areas are the areas which I want to focus on. Those are the areas which I would like to deep dive into and understand why it is happening out there. Now, this is a kind of a new way of taking age-old concept of time series and putting it out there. It's more of a predictive value, which is interesting. And predictions are something which you have to take with a pinch of salt. But having said that, it also gives you a kind of a lot of interesting things. Second, risk-based assurance of your controls. Now, we remember when IFC came into picture, or the first time when we had this concept of, I'm sure all of you are remembering SOX when it was there. So first year of SOX or first year of IFC, what we saw was that everyone was, going for more and more control. The whole concept was like, oh, you put control for this also, you put control for this also. So there was a kind of a concept that let's have a lot more control. But later point of time, we went for what we call it optimizing the controls. You optimize because every control has a dollar value. You have to spend money for that. So how can we optimize it up? The optimizations becomes important. So we need to look it into a different perspective altogether and ensure it up that we are able to optimize it up. Then we move to the area where can we automate the control reviews or the risk-based assurance, which basically means that I would like to ensure it up that as much as possible, we need to ensure that every risk and its related controls and it, basically we have design effectiveness testing and operation effectiveness testing. When we are doing it, we need to ensure that we have a complete picture or complete understanding that based on this data set, I can actually test my control and know whether this control is passed or failed. Gone are the days of doing sample testing and all thing, because now you have, capabilities which are there with you on your systems, which allows you to test all these things at any point of time. And with those kind of data, it also make easy for decision makers to see what is happening and take that forward. So this is how it is helping us. Third, time and cost saving. Okay, this is something which is there. I hope you are all here heard about something called the Great Resignation. So there are a lot of people who are after this pandemic and all things are coming out of jobs, or they are going for passions and other things. It is going to be for some time, I'm sure. And in this kind of scenario, okay, we need to understand that whenever an organizations are trying to do things, they are going to go for automation, because an automation process, it save a long-term cost for them. With humans and other things, there are other costs, which is the cost to companies are always very high. And we have to have a clear understanding in terms of what are the different things which are working and making sure. So I will be talking some examples of that. And last but not least, ethics and secondary checks. This is one very interesting thing. If I tell you something that I will be reviewing your work for a period of, let's say, 6 months, and I would be able to predict whether you are an ethical person uh, or not. Now, it may sound like, oh no, this is not going to happen, but there have been a lot of experiments and other things which has happened in this domain, which we will discuss it up with examples, how people are used to predict it up. Now, this is how finance and audit is getting impacted by artificial intelligence. But there is a kind of a background to that. When I say background, why are we talking about this the concept of AI today? The reason is very interesting. Whatever we are talking about, guys, I think there is one very old MIT paper on AI in 1964. I think somewhere you will find it up if you do a search on the web. This is one very interesting paper which was published by them, saying that they think that MIT have an idea on artificial intelligence. Okay, so this concept of AI is there for a very, very long time. Okay, very, very long time. Now, what has changed in this? That is something which is very interesting. The thing which has changed is there are now capability which was not there. When I say capability, the computing power, your mobile phone, today, it is possible that your mobile phone has more computing power than my laptop. It's actually possible. And it's also possible that, a laptop today can have, much more, uh, you know, power than what we can see, which is there in some of the systems earlier. So why I'm telling you this is that there are a lot of things which are happening in this domain. And this is the reason why we are talking about that things have changed. So there are some other things which has made it possible and would have never happened it up. Some of the papers which we are talking about on artificial intelligence or the algorithms which are there, they are there since 1970s, but there was no computing power to basically run it up. So when there was no computing power to run it up, what happens? It went to a kind of a level where, we had to ensure it up that, okay, this kind of things cannot run otherwise. So what is the best option we can do it here? So what we can do is, try to run with the other things. So what is the things which has made this possible? Let's try to understand that. I would say this is the genesis which has made what we see around us today. And this is like the evaluation of Industry 4.0, which something started in the 1700, with the steam engines and all thing. And this was a rapid pace of industrialization which happened. And then we move on to the second wave, and the second wave, as we all know, was on mass production, which happened in the peak came in the 1930. I'm sure all of you have seen this movie of, it's a very famous movie called Modern Times, which was by, our Charlie Chaplin. And that movie became a super duper hit. And that was of the 1930, where you see he going into the machine, coming out and all that kind of stuff. Now, from that time, we have moved to automation, computers and all things. Now, again, I'm trying to differentiate between automation and artificial intelligence. Automation is nothing but this is a lot of time people ask me, oh, this is automated, that's good. But AI is different than automation. AI is basically nothing but somewhere we are mimicking human. The machines are mimicking how human works. So they are actually copying it. But automation is just like I take some set of things, and then I try to ensure that it is working fine, or it has some kind of approach, or it is just ensured that I have everything which are required from a perspective of managing it up. Now that was something which we call it up as your famous concept of automation. So that was in 1960 and we got the peak. But as per World Economic Forum, which is a very interesting proponent of Industry 4.0, in fact, these are the people who have written books and books on top of this, saying that why Industry 4.0 is important and how we have to deal with that. One of the key things which they talk about there is that Industry 4.0, which has just started now, so the peak has not come, but we are already seeing the kind of things which are moving it up. Let it be Internet of Things, and we are seeing right now that gone are the days where a lot of things were taken an estimate level. We have now Internet of Things which can be there, or there are devices which can be put into very complex manufacturing process to know what's happening, how much is my work in progress, and actually estimate it in the right approach altogether. Now, those kind of thing too, we have big data analytics, which are moving from a perspective of not just seeing at one level, but moving in a different perspective altogether and trying to see the bigger thing, that not just internal data of the organization is important. We need to see the outside data also, and that try to be getting a holistic picture in terms of how it is taking care of that. And moving to smart manufacturing, where machines are controlling a lot of things. And we have seen it now. You go to any of the car factories, there are more robots than humans. Okay, this is in some of the factories. I saw in one of the very nice documentary which was there on robotics in automobile sector, and they have been actually using a lot of things. To something finally, as we call it, as your concept of I'm sure all of you have heard it. I think the voice is clear right now. Yeah, okay. There was some comment on the chat, so I'm just seeing it as when the comments are coming. So feel free, if you have any questions, you can actually just at any point of time put it out there, and I'm more than happy to stop myself and take that questions. So the main idea of friends is on the cyber system. Now, cyber physical system is it's a system which is partially in the cyberspace, partially on physical. Like for example, if you are using Alexa, your Alexa, if I'm having an Alexa, both are Alexa, but they both will act in a different manner. It is actually made with a kind of personalized for you. Same thing happened with Siri. Now, all these things have come a long way in terms of how we are looking at that. And this is also changing a very important thing, the complete perspective of audit in this new environment in the physical world. If there is a new concept which has come, this is called the mirror world. And interestingly, there is a thought paper which has been published on that, and I'm just given a kind of reference in the end of my presentation. When I share my presentation, you can actually go through it. What we are talking about is there is a kind of a thought process right now on Audit 4.0, which will be aligned to what we call it as our concept of the new kind of things which we see in changes because of Business 4.0. Now, let me give you an example here. I hope the audio should work if I try to do that. Let me share 1 minute. I'll share a web browser and try to bring something for you. The idea is, all of us, many of you were in retail, okay? And when you're in retail, I'm sure we have audit procedures for that. So when I say audit procedure, we are talking about that, you would check for inventory, you are going to check for how the, cash handling happens, how the monitoring happen, how the refill will happen, all of that. One moment. So I will just share the screen and just, try to bring that up for you. There is a kind of a concept which came in 2017, and right now they have 4 stores all over US. Now the question comes is, I think it should work from here. Can you see this screen, guys? I'm talking about the Amazon Go store and just thought I'll show you. This is the store which is there, and I want you to think of how we would audit it. Okay, let's try to just quickly see. It's a 2 minutes video, not even 2 minutes. It's a 1 minute 49-second video. Now, friends, this came in 2017, and the first store was, basically created in Seattle. And in 2017, I had a chance to go there, and I went with one of my friend. And one of the very interesting thing which I noticed is when he went inside, he basically used his QR code. I said, okay, that's great, interesting. And when again he took me inside, he has to scan the QR code once again. He scanned his same QR code. But what was very interesting, which I noticed was whenever I was picking up anything, it was getting added to his cart. Now that's actually a very interesting thing because what is happening is whatever I am doing, he's adding that is already taken care of because they are actually mapped the QR code with his face and they are actually tracking him down all the alley. Presently, I think if you search, there are more than 6 to 7 concept stores of this in US and Europe, and they are planning to go for it up. It is just a matter of time when it is being tested and made better. But once it is all stabilized and all thing, you will see this being actually used across the board. So this is what we call it the new kind of enterprises which happens. And this kind of enterprises, don't you think it will also ask us to change our audit procedure and how we do the financial accounting on that? And this is something which is coming up very well in terms of how we see that. You can see this is like Audit 4.0 on business parties. We are seeing that you have different products, your business processes are all aligned. There are data repositories, all these things, information which is coming. You can be sitting at any point of time and actually do that. Imagine a situation where I'm just thinking it loud. Let's say, for example, you are an internal audit head or you are a stat auditors for a company, and you start seeing some kind of signals, or I would say insights. The signals are like this, that I have a subsidiary in some other part of the world, and the first thing we see is suddenly there is an increase in sales, but there is also simultaneous increase in Sunday debtors. And then what you see next is one very interesting thing which happens is your sales returns has increased drastically, and there is your competitors are not have any changes in their sales cycle or anything. It is only happening for you, and your stock is piling up at your warehouse. The returns are increasing day by day, and you are also seeing that many of the people in finance and treasury has resigned. Now, all of this as a signals, it is doesn't say anything. But when you combine all the signals together and then try to see it, it makes a story that, okay, something is not okay in your organization, and we need to look into that. So those are the kind of things which we see. So you can see, we are trying to divide between here in physical world, what is happening. There are ERPs, there are machines, devices which are connected to that. All this are giving you a kind of a mirror of what's happening in the organizations to get a better understanding in terms of the insights and other things. And we know, okay, these are the things which is working fine, these are the things which are not working fine, and take it forward in terms of how we do that. Now, this thought process is very much aligned on data. And when there is huge amount of data, this is where the challenge lies, because as humans, we have a kind of limitations. We cannot go to an unlimited extent. So we have to actually see this in context of how much we can do that. So they are also changing the way you see audit 4.0 in future. You can see this. There are companies which are going to give their predictive audit. They will have continuous monitoring. They have continuous things coming up. There is a feedback services, and it is going to be more of a kind of a streamline where there are audit firms which are doing it, but they are also taking help from audit facilitating service vendors who provide the softwares or the technologies to do that. Now think of this. I used to work for Goldman Sachs, and I really like model of one of the company. So if you have been in the stock market or any of the thing, have you noticed something called the Bloomberg terminals? Bloomberg terminal is a very interesting business into how do they generate business? Now, if you see that, it is very interesting concept altogether. Bloomberg actually sells your data back to you. So, think of this. They are facilitating the trade, but what they are trying to do that you are putting the trades, all the trade goes into the system. in the system, they will basically accumulate all the data and then present it back to you that this is the volume of data which is happening. Now, if you don't do the trade, the business will not happen. Now, they act as a facilitators for the whole financial market. Now, similarly, there are going to be a new way of looking at analytical firms and software vendors or providers who would be acting as a kind of extension to the audit firms or the organizations and help them in terms of dealing with all this. Because it's a matter of just the time when we can actually see this happening. And that's something which we need to talk about and take it forward. So this is the one part of the story. Let's go to the next part of the story, which is very interesting, and then we will see the complete picture, what's happening. I'm sure all of you have seen all these videos about self-driving car, So I just took a kind of a thing from that. Self-driving car is a very interesting concept altogether. If you are, following Google self-driving car or Waymo or Uber has their own self-driving car, you will notice that they have only very few accidents, but then also they are tracking it up and taking their vehicles on the roads and trying to train them. So the whole idea is they are using a concept under AI. And again, I'm highlighting this, what I would like to stress upon that. AI is a bigger area altogether. Let's say, for example, right now I am just, presenting this thing. And I would, there is also something which is called as NLP. All of you have heard about that, right? We call it, natural language processing. So I can actually have whatever I'm saying right now, you can see this getting typed out there. So this is also an artificial intelligence. This is something which I am just trying to say to you, and you can see that on your screen, right? It's all about you, how you would like to use it. Now, this has come a long way. I remember when first time I saw computers and all the thing, we used to have something called as Dragon Natural Speaking. So you can actually have a, kind of a very interesting set of tools, and based on that, you can actually do that, but you have to train the system. And here I'm just talking about some blah, 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 and it is just writing it down out there. And, it's also kind of artificial intelligence. Now, it is basically what we call as a natural language processing. It is listening to me, what I'm telling, and it's just typing it out there. It can be reverse also, where what we see in many of the, type, where it is doing it up. Now, artificial intelligence has many, subdivisions out there. It has, areas like natural language processing. It has visual analytics, multiple things which is there. I would like to talk about one part of that, which is really making the Skynet. And that is something like a concept of machine learning. And my next, 35 minutes, I would like to focus more on that part only. And then I'd like to take more question answers. So feel free, if you have anywhere your doubt, just, you can just put a chat message out there, and I'll more than happy to respond back to that. Okay, now I think there's nothing in the chat, so it's good. So moving forward, self-driving car, it basically keep tracking. It has something called a lidar and some cameras through which it makes sense of its surrounding. And it just sees its sky, building, pole, road marking, everything it will learn, because in every part of the country, there can be it done in a different manner. So this is how a self-driving car learns. The same ML, machine learning, I'll explain you what it is later. Same thing is used even when we are talking about to find out whether your medical image analysis from the perspective of whether this tumor is a kind of melanoma or benign. So basically, it will decide on the cancer likelihood. And this is more of image processing. So you try to make sure the system learns from the images. And that changes everything. And they have actually done the tests, and it was much better than a human radiologist. Because sometimes the human radiologist, if he's tired or not in a good mood, he may do some mistakes. But you would notice that the machines don't have the concept of emotion. So they can actually work on this in a very different manner. So these are the two examples which are nothing related to finance and accounts I just gave you, that machine learning is being used across the thing. So fundamentally, what is machine learning? If I have to actually give a very crude example, if there is a kid who's playing with a matchbox and you tell him that don't play with the matchbox, you'll burn your finger. Would that guy listen to you? Maybe yes, maybe no. But the moment he burns his finger once, would he again play with that? I would say not really, right? The chances of him doing it is going to be very low in that kind of situation. Now, imagine I try to teach the same thing to machine. How? I am sure some of you here would have, at some point of time or other, have you done some amount of, I'm just thinking it loud, any programming? Or I remember all of our old members, if they are there used to be a paper called SADP in our institute when I was doing CA and all things. And there we have to write programming code in Pascal. So you should write an examination that these are the codes which are there. And you need to understand that it is very interesting because worldwide it is now the new phenomena. If you are aware of CFA, one of our sister organization which has a certification on this line, CFA has now a 100 marks paper on artificial intelligence. So you can understand how important it is. And the term ML is used extensively in the Basel III norm. So for the banking supervision on Basel III, they are actually talking about this to be there. So what is this machine learning? Let's try to understand from a basic example. See, usually when we used to do programming earlier, we were told that if you have to do programming, you need to have a logical thinking. So first in your brain, you should know what is the logic, what is A plus B, whatever your concept is that you write it down. Based on that, you program your codes, let it be C, C++, Pascal, or any of the programming language which you are doing it. Nowadays, most of the people use Python and R. Whatever you want to do that, you can actually use it. And then you connect your program to a data source, whatever data source you are actually thinking of. And finally, you will get the results. Now, this is the old way of thinking, which is called, instruction-based learning. So you are setting up an instruction to the machine, and we go with an assumption, which I hope all of you have heard about. A computer is a dumb machine or a smart machine? What do you think? Computers are dumb or smart? Any idea, friends? We all have been told they are dumb because they will do whatever you give the instruction on. Now that is the thing of the past. Now machines are learning. Now, what is the thing here? In the machine learning approach, I try to do it in a little different way. I'm trying to say, hey, you know what? I have some data sets for trading. I'm just telling you, let's say, for example, I just tell you that, you know what? I have done auditing for the last 18 years and I have some experience. If you give me some data, I will see the data, and based on my experience and gut feeling, I'll tell you that there is some issues out here. Now, this may not be a possible approach for a new rookie chartered accountant. So I have a data set for training. I have some already data set. I give the data set to the computer or the machine learning algorithm and says, take this data and learn what is your understanding from this data. Self-learning, you are your own guru. Try to learn it yourself. And based on that, why don't you do your own programming? You do your programming yourself. You write your own codes and then tell us what is the result. Now, are you seeing that instead of instruction, I am making the machine experience the data and do something else? Or I am, instead of going by logic, I'm focusing on data. Now, the reason why I'm able to do this is I have a huge amount of data available today. You name any company, they generate a huge amount of data. Now, this huge amount of data can be used in many ways. One of the things can be that I can train my models. Now, let me give an example here. Can I give a machine or an algorithm, which is basically, these are all statistical model. I don't know if you remember linear regression and all that kind of concept in your class 10, 11 statistics. Those same fundamentals are there. They are not something rocket science. But here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use the data set for training a model. Humans can see data maximum in 2 dimension or 3 dimension. but machines don't have that clock. They can see the same data set in n dimension, and they can actually get insight which sometimes we are not aware. So if you have to try to see it from a perspective of how it happens, it basically does, you can see this word here, very important word. I have just tried to make sure that we all understand. This is the concept which is there, feature extraction. Feature extraction is trying to see the data in multiple perspective and making sense of that data. That does this data make sense for us? And there are different types of models which are there. We call this as supervised, unsupervised, or reinforced learning. So what is supervised? I'll just explain it to you. In a supervised learning, I'll tell the machine this A plus B should equal to C. And I give him a different kind of data on that. So I'm supervising it. I'm trying to teach it. These are the things you should look into. And based on that, the machine will try to like, okay, this is how they want me to learn. And they will make their own algorithm or the programming code. And based on that, it will be able to do any predictive model. It can do classification problem, classifying different types of data in different things. And also, maybe give you annotated data out of that. Whereas unsupervised learning, I don't tell the data what or tell the program what to do. I just say, here is the data, read it for yourself and try to, solve the problem which is there. Or I can have a reinforced learning where I set some kind of data. Now, it may look like a very odd thing for you. Let me give you a kind of a use case. Maybe that would help us understand it better. So the use case is something like this. Think that you have around 3 lakhs vendors in your system, in your ERP, or SAP, or Oracle, any of the things. Now, you would like to do a third-party vendor risk management. You want to know whether all these vendors are okay, or there is some kind of anomaly, or there are suspicious vendors which are there. Now, what you do is you try to put some 50 parameters or 50 or 40 parameters about each vendors. When did they came into the system? What is the business we are doing with these guys? Or think of something like, okay, this vendor email ID is gmail.com. His address, which is given in our database, it doesn't exist on, whether it exists or not exist on Google Map. Whether this guy is having a bank account in some other country where we have to do, like I'm just telling you examples out there. So you have 300,000, which is 3 lakh vendors, very big number. Now, either you can take all this, you can get the feature extracted and put it to a file. And I give it to you, let's say, for example, and you have worked in this field for last 20 years. So you have a very interesting understanding of how the whole business works. Now, the moment I'll give this file to you, I'll give you first 100 top file out there. And I say, sir, please, or madam, please check this one. And tell me on your gut feeling, which are the suspicious vendors as per you. So maybe you can't explain me on what logic. There is no logic out there. You just see some of the parameters and here and there. You say out of this 100, this 5 looks suspicious to me. Great. Now imagine I take that learning, which is a supervised learning, and put as a training set to my algorithm and saying that, see, person X who has 18 years of experience, when he went through the data, he actually found this as suspicious. Can you try to use this learning and then put it up on this one? And the machine can do amazing wonders. And it has, basically, these are the success stories which we already have been done. So based on that, you can even make it more better. You can take another 100 and train it. That's a new data to make the whole program better. Now, this is how we are using it in audit or finance function. But I want to show you something which is already being done in a very interesting game. We all know chess used to be one of the tough game, which requires a lot of strategy and thought process. But there is one more strategy game which is more complex than chess, and that is called Go. It is played in China, South Korea, North Korea. This side they play that up. It's a very interesting strategy game. Now, what happened was, till now, if you remember something around 2004-5, there was a kind of a game between IBM has a computer called IBM Blue and Gary Kasparov. There was a chess championship. And if you recall it, I don't know how many of you recall it, but Mr. Gary Kasparov, who was the grandmaster at that point of time, he lost that, championship. And that time IBM, it was a very good a PR for, public relations for IBM. They got a lot of, things in the, in the world press and everything. People were talking about that. And that time what happened was, one very interesting thing was that that computer which was made, Deep Blue, that was the name of the computer at that time. It was, investment was upwards something around $7 million. And it was basically programmed that if this happened, you need to do this. If this happened, then you need to do this. So that was the approach which was taken in that program. And recently, there is a company called DeepMind, which is, basically funded by Google, is a subsidiary of Google. And these people actually did a program called AlphaGo. And this program of AlphaGo was very interesting because this program was based on what we call it as self-learning by computer. Okay. When I say self-learning was by computer, it was all that they gave the old games of this one to AlphaGo program, and it learned from that. In fact, if you get time, I would highly recommend you to watch the complete documentary on AlphaGo. This is from DeepMind. It is like 1.5 hours. You will take some time to understand it up. But I just wanted to explain you the basic fundamental of AlphaGo, because it's a 2 minutes video which explain you, completely how we are actually, trying to track it up in terms of the whole process of machine learning, how organizations are changing it up, what are the key features which we have to understand. And they have this Google AI, which was gone to an extent that the world champion, KG, he lost to that. So this is something which is very, very interesting thing. You should, if you get a time, I would highly recommend you to watch it, because this is the concept of the power of machine learning. And so have a look at this and then we'll discuss it more. So, guys, this was basically a kind of a small documentary on AlphaGo. But the point which I want to tell you about that, the idea here was on a different line altogether. They are trying to solve a problem. In fact, after AlphaGo, this people have gone to one more level. There's a kind of a new program they made called AlphaGo Zero, and that was much, much faster than the AlphaGo. In fact, AlphaGo lost to AlphaGo Zero. So they have been actually training the model again and again and making it better. It is something like they are making the same program. Let's say, for example, I tell you that in chess, these are the combination which are there. So this combination which are there would be, someone can actually learn and try to play it out there. But make sure, I say, I'll make the computer program only play the game for 30,000 times. So I'll say this is the rules of the game and you play the game. And when you start playing the game, what will happen? You will, over a period of time, you will become expert in that. And you have got a knowledge of 60,000 times playing the game. Or you can also train from the data of the world champion, how they are playing it up. And that knowledge is being used by programs like data, AlphaGo and AlphaGo Zero. There is a new one called AlphaGo Zero, and they are trying to change it up. Now, this same power is now available to people like you and me. How? I call it up as democratization of AI. Okay, I don't know how many of you know. I'm just opening one slide. This is a kind of a tool called H2O.ai. Okay, H2O.ai is basically trying to give you free open source, AI models, which you can actually use it up. Now, this becomes very interesting because earlier all these things were actually drafted. So open source is trying to move a lot of things. It is trying to bring them at a different level altogether. And in this kind of situation, we need to have a clear understanding of what we can do and what we are not doing it up. Okay. So this is one part. Now, this machine learning also happened because of one more part, this. What you're seeing on the screen are most of the tools which are open source, friends. Okay. And why I say these are all open source, because earlier what used to happen is I was just wanted to show you one very interesting real life example of this one. I'll just maybe open it to you in some time. What I want to say is that today you can deal with a large volume data. I have a i5 machine and i7 machine, and in i5 and i7 machine there was a time when we used to deal with tools like ACL and IDEA, and the maximum you will have like 5-10 million line items and all thing, and your system will slow down. But today you have a lot of tools in this domain, especially I'll just maybe underline one or two of them. Yeah, and which is open source. You don't have to even pay a single rupees 9, or Pentaho, and tools like Hadoop and MongoDB. This basically enables you. Here we go, MongoDB. This technologies basically cost you nothing, and they are 300 times more powerful than whatever we have seen, all the things, and anyone can start using it up. That it is not like something you require to have good knowledge of technology or anything as such. It is just like every Tom, Dick, and Harry with maybe 1 or 2 days sessions will be able to understand that. So you can deal with a huge, large volume of data, which was earlier not feasible. You are able to deal with external data. Let's say, for example, I'm doing clearly the whole idea is that we have to have a clear understanding on terms of unstructured data. When I say unstructured data, we are talking about data which is coming from, think of something on, from the World Wide Web, or from PDFs which are there, or pictures, or any kind of data which is not put into an Excel or a database form. So can we deal with that? Or techniques of using statistical model. I just wanted to show you one of the example here of a couple of statistical model, which all of us been using it up, right? Let it be isolation forest, which is actually an ML model altogether, or moving on to Benford laws, using RSF, different kind of transaction data or PDF model, depending on any of the statistical model, which earlier used to be a kind of a big thing, but now it has become like a kind of back of your thing. You can actually use it up. Machine learning, I already talked about that. and trying to get what we call it as a real-time analysis. Now, with the kind of computing power which is available, what happens is we need to have a clear understanding on terms of how we are dealing with it, which basically means, let's say, for example, if I am having any kind of thing, especially in money laundering and other cases in banks and financial statement, a financial institution, so they would like to know at a real-time basis what's happening, what are the key things which are working, what are not working, and that becomes a critical function altogether. So those things happens, and the most interesting, we have been moving from the old way of trying to say that okay, there is an SEO, there is a very interesting, let's say example I'm just giving you. There's an interesting, what we call it as SOP, and we are imagining or we are going with an assumption that people are following the SOP. But in the real life situation, do people are really following it up or not? Now that is the question which we need to ask up. And from a perspective of interactive visualization, we have this concept of process and mining, which is gaining a lot of importance in the near what we call it as time, where you have data which is time stamped, because every data, every event which is happening, it would be time stamped. So usually, let's say for example, I'm just seeing some purchase process is there, procure to pay cycle, and we think this is the happy path, everyone is following it. But when you try to see the timestamp and what are the path it is taking, you try to see that no, there have been a lot of cases where PO was resubmitted multiple times, which doesn't make sense. Or you're seeing that from PO directly they have not done the GR or good receive, and they directly done the invoice has been entered. Now this gives a kind of a new paths which we never thought of. I'm just giving an interactive idea about how it has happened. So this is process mining, gives you all this understanding in terms of having an interactive visualization and help us understand how all these things are being worked out. Okay, so friends, these technologies which we are talking about are today available for every one of us, and the system architecture looks something like this. You are using on database side, you are using any kind of Python or database which you can use, SQL, MongoDB, any of the thing, and you can keep on having an application server working on different kind of technology what you see out there. And at the client facing, it can be any Power BI, Tableau, or Web UI which you can use and take that forward. This is how the system architecture look like. And there are a lot of success stories in finance and audit function, which I thought I'll just try to discuss with you, because these are the kind of things which are happening right now as we discuss. That can be something which is related to identifications of fraud and revenue leakage in any organization. So basically trying to see that, you try to see the accounts payable, and based on the master data and the transactional data, you try to see that is there a pattern which is matching with something which has happened anytime earlier. If it has happened sometime anytime earlier, then this is a kind of a food for thought that it is possible the same pattern can be repeated again also. Second, bad debts. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Can we predict bad debts? Now, in the FMCG sector, where they are dealing with a lot of dealers, the chances of check bouncing or payment not coming is always very high. Now, they are actually trying to use, based on the patterns of the transaction which is happening in a dealer's account, with an accuracy of around 87%, they are able to predict that, okay, this account customer is going to become a default and this is not there. And when you know that out of your total population size of maybe 2 lakhs dealers, this 100 dealers, you have to keep them on hypercare and try to keep a track of that. It makes the life easier because it gives you a funnel approach in terms of seeing on what area I should focus on, what are the things which I'm going to do. The third thing, which is now another success stories which are there right now, is interestingly a concept of spend analytics. Basically, people just try to see the spend which is happening. Now, if you have 3 factories or 4 factories in different part of India or world, and you want to basically do an apple-to-apple comparison, so the best option would be knowing what are the spend, how much we are spending on the raw material, how much is the cost of labor, and this information is already there in your GL accounts. The only thing is that we need to have a kind of automated tools which can actually review it up and try to give it up that, okay, this is what has happened. And, there are sometimes very surprising information comes into picture because of that. Especially like you will see that when, someone is seeing the office space rate, it came out that for a multinational company, the Manila office was the most expensive office compared to any other part. It was like expected it will be New York or London, but it come out that Manila was the most expensive office. Now, no one ever thought of, because Manila was a small business and no one bothered it out. But when the spend analytics information comes, the insights which comes, we call it insight, foresight, and hindsight. The insight which comes, they gave you a very interesting understanding on terms of the spend analytics. Similarly, GL code review. We all know GL code mistakes are something which are very common in Omnitam. So the posting happens in the wrong GL codes and all things. Now, can we actually have systems which can actually check for this one, that whether these GL codes are correct, they're working fine, or based on what was the posting which was done for the same transaction in the future, can we predict which is the next one it is going to work it out? Contractual awards, which is nothing but trying to see any collusion with the vendors. And nowadays, organizations are using very high-end systems like Ariba and all things, where we do reverse auctions and all things. So you are having a lot of data about this tools right now, or basically with your vendors, which never used to happen earlier when we used to have two envelope systems of submitting the bid. So in this kind of things, if you basically use big data along with the external data set, a lot of collusion information which can be actually looked into. The next one, again, very interesting, friends. I'm sure all of you have heard about that under the Basel II norm, even Basel III norms, they have actually said that, AI and machine learning should be used by banking setup, because predicting of non-performing asset. Now, this is very interesting. One of the area we always work on in banks audit are trying to see the non-performing asset, NPS. And already there is a lot of data which is there. And, you have noticing some very interesting thing where RBI is penalizing banks after banks, because there are a lot of things which banks promise that they have, complied with. One of the thing is CIF part, where basically one person should not have two customer ID in the system. But there have been a lot of cases where this has come up, and there was no enough checks and balances in the core banking system. Or similarly, trying to see from a perspective of predicting the non-performing asset, depending on the sector which it is in, depending on its DP, depending on the data which is coming, the transaction which are happening, you can actually get a feel of that, whether the transactions are gone up or gone down. And this model can be actually used extensively. We call it a random forest, one of the model to use out there. And last but not least, one of my favorite area is travel and entertainment expenditure. Why this is one of my favorite area, I'll tell you. The reason is, this is the area where you will find something very, very interesting happening. When I say interesting, you have duplicate claim which happens. You have policy exceptions. You have overstated expenses. You have personal expenses which are put into the company expenses, fictitious claims, and more higher, I would say, spend based on the internal benchmarking. Now here we developed some of the, I would say, ML model, which was basically tried to see some 25 rules of checking for some information in internal and external thing. Like, for example, distance between two locations. What is the cost of living in index of various cities in India? So there's one very interesting site. I don't know if you have heard about that site called Statistica. Statistica is one very interesting site, which actually you can go for and try to get all the spend data about what is the cost of living index and how it is being worked, blah blah blah, all this thing. And once you have this information, the most interesting thing is you start getting a lot of insight. See, T&E expenditure is one area. T&E is one area where the volume is very high. Okay, we all know the volume is also always very, very high. But though the volume is very high, there is one challenge which is there. The effort of trying to see the time and what is cost benefit analysis, you can't put that much of time into that. Now this can be actually easily analyzed and taken forward. So the idea is we have today a different set of data at different point of time which can be used, and that was never the case which was there. I'm sure all of you have heard about one very interesting site where I personally go close to on a daily basis, data.gov.in. And this is the data where you have information from a perspective, you have information about what are the different cost of living index which is there. And all this data is, if you register for that, is at 10 rupees or 15 rupees maximum. You have vahan.org data. You can basically check a lot of things about the vehicles which have come in, gone out. And you have APIs, which basically means you can actually attach it with any of your program and do a kind of 100% population and see for exceptions which are there. So the point is that we have a complete picture which is changing in terms of how we see, different data sets which are coming into picture, different kind of information which is working it out and taking it forward in a different area altogether. So friends, this becomes a very, very interesting insight for anyone who is into finance and audit to see things in a very, very different perspective than what we have been seeing all the time. Usually we are called, like, as chartered accountants, we are always known as to be someone who are very, very, what we call it as conservative in our approach, or, we see things in a different perspective. But the idea is, though we are conservative in our approach and taking it forward, there is so much of new things which is coming our way, and this Skynet, which we can build, can actually help us to do a lot of things in a very, very different manner. Moving forward, these are the good things I talked to you about the Skynet, but there are still a lot of challenges also. So AI or ML, if you are using it up, there are a lot of challenges which happens here. So that was a good thing that yes, it can add, and there are a lot of success stories. But what are the challenges out there? So the first challenge, and which is also an opportunity, friends, for all of us as chartered accountant, is business understanding. You have seen one very nice terminology which is being used nowadays. You can go to naukri.com or any of this job site and search for data scientist. So data scientist is now the new buzzword everywhere we see them actually being used. Now, one of the things which they don't have, and as chartered accountant we have, is the knowledge of the business. I again tell you, if you ever go today, like after the session, you get little inspired and you say, okay, let me learn ML, and you go to YouTube channel or any of this Coursera and try to learn something on machine learning. In 90% of the courses, the first course exercise which they will give you is they will give you a data set of pictures of dog and pictures of cat, and they will say, please try to make a program which will be able to differentiate between cat picture and dog picture. Now, see, that is a kind of a problem which is being solved. Okay, no problem. But the idea is we are more of a business consultant. We understand business more and we understand business problems more. So can we use the same knowledge in solving business challenges instead of wasting it on dog picture and cat picture? It's also important. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's better to focus on business understanding. Second, it is also very important to have a data understanding. Many a time, the challenge which will be there is, do we have enough data? In machine learning, always we remember AI whenever using it. The concept is you require a huge set of data. More the data, the better your reporting will come. Okay. Third, we have to prepare the data for the analysis. I was in 2016, I attended one of the session of, there was a conference at IIA New York, a global conference, and there was a speech by the head of audit of AIG, which is a insurance powerhouse. And they were said that what are the biggest challenge you find in data science? And he said, getting the data ready. Running the model is easier, okay, but getting the data ready and making sure that the data is correct. The reason is, in enterprise, many of the enterprises, there is no proper data governance. Though they say they are having data governance, when you actually basically deep dive into that, you see that it is garbage in, garbage out in many of the organization, including, I would be, very open. I hope you know that what happened with the first XBRL data, which was used by MCA. It was all junked out, initial XBRL data. So most of the organizations don't have a proper data governance models, and that created a lot of problem. And before we do that, the key things after data preparation is modeling the things what you would like to do and then take that forward. And we have to also evaluate the model. Why we have to evaluate the model? The reason is very simple. Your model can be biased. I'll use the word biased. See, ultimately, though machine learnings were learning it itself, if I keep telling you that, oh, this is how you have to do that, sometimes it can become biased. I'll give you an example. Now there is one association called Algorithmic Audit Association, AAA. Now, why did they came into picture? There's a very interesting story about that. So the California Police Department actually wanted to have an automatic machine learning system which will decide based on where are the more crime cases happening, where should we put the pilot car. You have seen the police cars which are having in the night, they will have the lights on and they will be placed in different places. So where should we place our police cars? They wanted to have things. So every place where the crime happened, they will put it on Google map and there will be a kind of latitude, longitude there. And based on that, where more crimes are happening, you should have your police car. So there is a kind of a psychological pressure on the criminals not to do a crime. This is kind of a process which was thought process out there. Now, friends, what happened was this was correct. But 6 months after they went live, they found a very interesting pattern. What was the pattern? Most of the police car in whole of California are going into the black neighborhood area. They're not going into other side. The reason was the weightage which was given, that whether it's a white black neighborhood or a black neighborhood, they increase the weightage very high out there. So in that kind of thing, there is a requirement nowadays to audit AI also. And we have to see whether the deployment is proper, whether there's a proper change management is happening. Not every Tom, Dick, and Harry can do that. And making sure the production in the production environment, how the performance is there. Because it will take some time before it can become streamlined. Just like any other IT systems, it takes some time to stabilize and then make it better. Okay. Then when the last part which I would like to discuss with you here is, this is good, ML is here, AI is there, but don't you think there should be some kind of validation, some kind of assurance that whatever it is coming is correct or not? Now, there have been a lot of material which is coming in this domain right now, that the auditing of ML and AI is very much important, because if you're not doing it, you are creating a monster which will be not on checks. So people are now trying to bring that up with audit baselining. Audit baselining is nothing but they're trying to say, okay, this is the minimum things which should be there. This is how, the code will be reviewed, what are the code has been written, and we'll notice how the machine learning is learning. There was one interesting case which happened, and I'm sure all of you have heard about that in the newspaper also, that, what happened was there were some bots. Bots are like just like robots. Some programs were there which was being tested by Facebook. And what they noticed, they are coming out with Meta. So the Facebook is Meta. So for that, they were trying to see that there should be an automatic program which can actually learn and do some of the cleanup stuff which humans were doing earlier in the system. And they found that this two program developed their own language to communicate, and they shut down this program. So what happens is many times we have to review it up rightly, that whether it's working in the right way, or it should not happen, it becomes out of control. And similarly, there is a reproduction or testing of the model, how it is working, what is the scoring it is coming. So it's very easy now to test it up that, okay, these are the steps you have taken. I should be able to reproduce the same thing. Just like what we have done, in our auditing standards also we have it. If you are doing an audit and you have used analytical tools, or you have used analytics into that, any other person, if he follows the same step as what you have done, he should get the same result. Now that's something which can come out here also in terms of documenting it and taking it out that. And also, whenever we are dealing with that, there are hundreds of models which are present right now in terms of how we can use it. So we can actually see it from a perspective of which model to use, how we can actually take that forward and deal with that. So friends, just to summarize what I wanted to, discuss with all of you and, take your questions on that. I just thought last 15 minutes, I'll just keep it with question answers if you have any. What we need to understand is the message, I would say, as a summarization, is ML, which is one of the subset of AI, is taking our domain of finance and audit through a big transformation. And this has begun because right now we are playing with some basic and intermediate AI. There are a lot of interesting things which is coming our way. Now, we have to adapt it. I would say, we won't say we can. we have to adapt it. So it's always a first mover advantage. I would say you should start using, checking them out, working on that on a, I would say, a POC models, because right now it may be a little early for totally taking a deep dive, but we should be aware of what are the things which are happening, how it is being working it out, and based on that, try to connect all the dots which are there in this domain. And that something is going to help us make it better in overall and ensure that we can get a complete picture in terms of what are the things which is happening, how it is going up, and why this information is to be done with a kind of, I would say, explosion of data. This is the best time which we can have it, because we are having the capabilities to basically exploit the data. We have the data, we have the models, so everything is like coming into place for us into use it up. And if you have been reading about Harvard Business Review, they said most of the organizations which are successful organizations always are experimenting with new ideas, because it's possible some of the ideas will fail, but it is always better to be ahead of the game in terms of being the first or being someone who can actually use it and add a lot of value in your overall organizations. So this is something which I just wanted to summarize and share with all of you friends. Feel free, if you have any questions, you can put in the chat, or I would request you to ensure you can actually ask that question also. Either way, which would be more than happy. And if you want the slide, I'll be sharing it with the Institute, so you can actually take it from there and try to use it. But remember, the message which is there is there are a lot of things which are changing around us, and there are a lot of interesting tools which are coming. I don't know, I always keep on promoting this in all my session, and the reason is it's actually open source and it's actually very powerful. I'm sure all of you have heard about a tool called NIME, which is one of the it stands for Constant Information Miner. It's actually a kind of open source data wrangling tool, which is developed by what we call it as one of the universities in Switzerland, and it is very open source. So it has integration with many of this other tools, and in fact, you can actually start using them across the board. So this is something which you should, maybe start trying it, because the reason is it's simple drag and drop, and you don't have to have any kind of programming knowledge if you are actually having fundamental understanding in terms of how things are happening. Just giving it up, goodbye. So you can just try to connect and start using it up. So that's what I was wanting to tell you, that you need to get your hands dirty, try doing this. And that would something which will add a lot of value in terms of what we are doing it up and taking forward. Okay. Any questions, friends? Feel free to let me know. And if you have any doubt.
Questions here, Anand. Have you received any directly there?
On the chat, I'm just seeing it up, sir. No, any questions? I'll just ping it up. I think, yeah, they should be able to see my message now. And if they have any questions, we can actually see that. Otherwise, you can drop me a mail. That should be also good. There's one question which is there. Okay, so how do we start working in this domain? Okay, so friends, how we can start working on this domain. I would say the first step which is there is trying to see what's happening around that. It's actually a new area. See, when we first time wanted to do a bank branch audit, I'm sure all of you have done bank branch audit. We never knew what is CASA, what is that, and all things. CASA only we knew money, okay, but then we know CASA accounts are different accounts and all that kind of concept. So a knowledge on that area will help us in terms of knowing, okay, this is what is expected out of there. This is the things which are happening out there. And start small. I would say there are on finance and audit, there are a lot of use cases. I call it use cases which are already available right now. And you can start, using those cases and try in your organization with your data. It's something as I just showed you, 9 you have to install, connect to your HANA, ECC, or any of the database in Excel or anything, and play around with that. That would give you a kind of confidence that, okay, I understand that. And then slowly, all these things like H2O.ai and other things which I showed you, these are all open source. So you can just connect it through NIME only and take that forward. So those will help you in terms of, taking you forward, I would say. Okay, great. I think this is good. Okay, any course. Okay. Okay, I will tell you, sir, don't go for any courses and all the thing. This is, I would say there is a lot of content which is there on our Institute website. There are a lot of content which is there on NPTEL. There are a lot of courses on many of the YouTube channels. It's just you have to start it up. Read some books and all thing. It may take long time, but you'll understand it better. You will know what are the things which is happening. And I would say this will also help you in terms of, getting the real understanding of that. And there are a lot of people in this field. I know personally a lot of chartered accountants who work in this. You can reach out to them for any doubts, any query, any questions. They will be more than happy to help you. Okay, one question from Pawan. Okay, so there's a question which is very interesting. The question is, which area we should start from? Which area we should start from? Okay, I would say it will depend on your organization, what you're doing. If you are in industry, then it will be a different thing. And if you are in practice, then it will be different thing. I know some people who are using it for GST also. Very interestingly, I know someone who it's not AI, they use RPA, robotic process automation, for GST reconciliation. So it's all about how you use it up and how we can come out with our own jugaad, and we can actually look into that. So I would say try to start with small. Don't go for a big bang kind of approach. Start small. Try to see some of the things, use cases which are very commonly used in organizations, especially procurement and other things, and then you can actually build up on that. Maybe it can become a part of your audit, cycles also, for if you're doing a first start audit or anything of your client and all these things. Maybe I'll just show you also one of the things. Abhilash has a question: will AI replace CA in long term? I don't think so, Abhilash, that we will be replaced so easily. We are there for a very long time and we are adapting with this. But yes, I hope you have seen, Abhilash, our Future of Job report, which says the traditional way of looking at how we were actually thinking of, having audit functions and all that kind of stuff, it is going to change. And whether we like it or not, this is true that we will see a lot of our regular thing. I'll just give you an example here. If you are having some of your friends who are working in KPOs and BPOs, what happens is today a lot of people are getting redundant because of automation, because they are using RPA, robotic process automation, to basically do it up. So I would say with already our institute is, trying to do a lot of things in this domain. So I don't think we will be out, but yes, it'll change. I just wanted to show you something which is very interesting. This is actually on Concur data, sample data, which is there, Concur, trying to tell you that which of the account, international travel or domestic output, something is not okay. So this is actually, once you set it up, it is continuously running. So, why I'm just showing it to you is, now, first time you'll require a lot of chart accountant, our knowledge will be there. But once you set it up, it is there. It is going to work for a very long time. So there is going to be, if there is someone who's doing this work for a long time, then that person will be little out of sync, or he has to retrain himself for other year. So I would say that is what is there. And we have to just not learn new thing. We have to unlearn some of the old thing also, Abhilash. So that's something which we need to look into. But personally speaking, I will not say I will replace CAs or at all, but you don't know what will happen if the Skynet takes over. It decides something to do. But right now, my gut feeling, no, we will be still there. You require to have the knowledge of the business. But yes, we have to upgrade ourselves with this understanding. See, I'll tell you one final thing here. I remember when I just joined CA, when I joined that time, my articleship. So, MCA 21 was there and they came out with digital signature. And I'm sure a lot of other people, senior members, will be here. So first time when we heard what is digital signature, I thought this one, that you have to just sign and scan, that is digital signature. And I'm sure many of other people would have thought of the same thing. But today we use digital signature day in, day out, and we have become expert with that. Yes, our traditional work has changed, where we have to stand in the MCA office, file it up manually and all thing. But yes, everything has pros and cons which are there. I hope that answers your question, Abhilash sir. Okay.
Any other questions, sir?
No, I think that is the last question. I got 4 questions.
Okay. Yeah, friends, we had a fabulous session. We explained in detail the necessity of learning all the new techniques. So unless we learn, I think we cannot move forward. I think the question of Abhilash, whether AI replace CAs, yes, if you are not changing, definitely it will replace. So then for the information of members, Bangalore branch is conducting a data analytics 2 days hands-on training on 21st and 22nd January. I request all of you, to those who are interested, it's a very, very limited number. It's a hands-on training in computer lab, 2 full days, 12 hours of learning on data analytics. So I request those who are interested, only 30 seats available. Please register quickly, so that if the more number of required, and next month, then February it will come. So those who are really interested to learn new things, particularly those who are asked now whether is there any course available,
Yeah.
I think this may be a starting course.
Yes, very good, sir. That's a very
Okay,
good one.
so it's a hands-on training, 12 days. It's very, very nominally charged, just 3,000 plus tax is charged for 2 full days. So you are going to get 2 months the software also, the tool also you are going to get for hands-on learning. So I request those who are really interested, please register for that program. It is available online now for registration. Please visit bangaloricai.org. With that note, once again, our wholehearted thanks to CA Anand Jangid for
Sir,
his
thank you.
valuable knowledge and precious time shared with us. Thank you very much, Anand, once again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Participants, you are the reason, your interest made us to organize this program. Thank you very much. Please keep visit bangaloreici.org for all our upcoming programs, and register and encourage us to conduct more new and very, very important programs for all of you. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Good
See
night,
you
sir.
all.